My name is Jeremy Gummeljak, and I'm a system-wide construction manager for the CSU Office of the Chancellor, and I'm the CJE SoCal chapter leader. I was kind of voluntold by Rona that I had to do this to become part of the group, so I agreed. I already did my time at CMAA, so I might as well come over and do my time at CJE. So I'm very excited to restart this chapter, but I can't do it alone. I need help planning, scheduling, and with the upcoming events. I'll put my contact information in the chat. You can call me or email me and just let me know how you'd like to get involved. So today we're going to be talking about JOC program best practices, lessons learned, successes, pluses, deltas, that kind of stuff. So I just want to introduce today's speakers. So I already introduced myself, James.
James Matz with Foss of Cannon Design, National Account Manager, based out of Southern California.
Awesome. Thanks, James. Rona?
Hello, Rona Andrus, Executive Director at the Center for Job Order Contracting Excellence, otherwise known as CJE.
Nice. So she is actually our timekeeper. So we're going to actually start running through the best practices. So she's going to set up a little timer just to make sure that we don't go overtime. I know everybody, it's our lunch break if you're on the West Coast. So we want to kind of get through this. If you want to eat lunch, turn off your camera, eat your peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and just enjoy the show. So taking a look at our first best practice. So that's conducting fiscal planning and defining the program parameters. So at the Office of the Chancellor for CSU, we procured 27 JOC contracts, thanks to Jason Kang, who's on the call, for the 2021 season. And that helps campuses get more involved, get their campuses more involved with JOC. They have a 5-year plan, but they also have maintenance projects that they need help with. So we issued RFP with all the documents and even a slide deck presentation to help the new JOC contractors that haven't done JOC before, just to kind of educate them. They're all up on our CBDC website. I can throw that in the chat here in a few minutes too. But some campuses actually procure their own JOC contracts. Northridge has their own, CSUN has their own, Fullerton has their own. And to kind of assist in that, we use this program called ISIS for our facilities management group to really figure out what the issues are at each campus and what items may be breaking down. So our specialty contracts have been extremely popular. Last year, we had hazmat, and we actually had mechanical JOC contractors as well, which are very, very popular with our campuses. James, you want to chime in on this one?
Absolutely. I love looking at specialty contracts, JOC contracts for most agencies, because you get, you look at your, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more, but you're going to look at your 5-year plans and your facility assessments, and you get to nest together different types of work. If you know in 2023, you're going to be doing a lot of roofs, I would say, you get your pre-quals ready for your roofing contract, what type of roofing materials you're going to need and what kind of warranties you want, and put together that roofing contract before you get there, before the time is up, so it's too late. Also, you can do mechanical contracts, asphalt. It's really driven by your fiscal plans, what your plans are for each year, according to the assets. One of my favorite ones was Cal State Long Beach. We used to do a metal maintenance one for that campus, where they're right on the beach. So metal maintenance was a constant. So they'd, every year they go back out to bid, and the contractor would just start at one end of the building, kind of like the Golden Gate Bridge story, and strip off the rust and repaint and do different sections every year. Those type of contracts are really valuable to agencies if they are able to look at their asset management and their deficiencies and their maintenance requirements.
Great. So let's take a quick look at the owner historical data. Maybe James, you can kind of speak to this one, but it definitely seems like a lot of the JOC projects really are that really minor cap, at least very minor cap at the CSU.
And at the CSU and most agencies, I think that's what the original idea for JOC is, to make it for smaller projects. I mean, you will see $2 million, $3 million projects, $4 million projects, but typically you're going to see the projects like this particular one where we're looking at a review of another client, where it was $264,000 was their average project size. And for some agencies, that's actually above their project limit. Some agencies have budgets of $150,000, $200,000, $250,000 for their total value of a JOC project. And what that does is it utilizes JOC for what it's best for, it being fast and responsive and the partnership. And you have that umbrella of a contract and you're able to fit all those projects under a single umbrella, which is a single bid. So it just makes it a fast, easier process. So that I thought that was a nice slide that Rana provided us.
Well, and I'd be really interested to see what this is, because I think this is all kind of 2019 data, correct?
Correct. That was 2019.
I'd be interested to see what this is post-pandemic. Actually, can I call it post-pandemic? Are we there yet? I was at the grocery store, nobody was wearing masks. I was like, what's happening? No masks.
This particular program that had 10 million a year in 2019 actually is doing 30 million a year now.
Really?
Yes.
That's impressive.
Do you know what they're at? Do you know how the pie is broken out now by any chance? Is it still the same project size?
Yeah,
Each
pretty
individual
much. I mean,
project?
the limits went up slightly, kind of like everybody else, just a slight adjustment. So you could sort of shift everything, but they still had the majority of the projects in the smaller range.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll move on to number 2, best practice number 2. So workflow is always the best flow. And to me, any workflow, you need more shapes and brighter colors. It really pops out and gets your PMs and CMs kind of knowing the order of how it should begin, right? Because at CSU, I'm dealing with campuses, and sometimes people are experienced doing projects and sometimes they're not experienced, but having a clear workflow process is key. I mean, it sets your expectations out there. If you pull in consultants or whomever, they'll know how the system works. So I know with me, back when I was a project manager, I would have this printed up and literally sitting right in my cube, just to remind me what process I was at. But great resource to have. So coming up to JOC program best practice number 3. So a designated program champion is key to the success of any program. Really having a cheerleader and having somebody there that knows the statute and knows the general conditions and can really kind of get into it and be the champion of it. I also think, James, important to set up is a FAQ, or frequently asked questions. You can either do either have a list or maybe even put it on some sort of a website to where I know that I get a lot of the same questions from my campuses over and over and over again, and it would just be easier to direct them. And I don't mind answering them, but to have a repository as to where they can find the answers. Number 4, best practice number 4. So execute contractor outreach plan and JOC education. So at CSU, we provide slide decks to the public so they can get more information about how JOC works at the CSU. JOC works differently in all places. We were talking about this before the call started. It's very different in Arizona, correct? Than it is in California.
Yeah.
So it's important to be specific on what your, as an owner, what your program expects, what we expect of the contractors, the administrators, and the hired help, the construction managers, the consultants.
And I think one common thread, regardless of where you are in the country, is this small business incubating mentoring program that JOC was intended to be. So I think that even though you might have nuances and size and pricing and so forth, that one common thread is very important.
Yeah, for sure. So moving on to best practice number 5. So provide pre-qualification and select CJPs. So our team rigorously pre-qualifies. Look, Jason's even looking into the screen right now. Rigorously pre-qualifies JOC contracts all over the state of California. He's probably doing one right now, I would guess. I can't tell. But the contracts are all are references to assure that these references are all contacted, so we can assure that projects are completed on time and on budget, on schedule. So even when contractors apply, we're going to call and we're going to do questionnaires to make sure that it's a valid contract and they've done valid work. So we call it so it's either JOC experience or we call it concurrent experience, right? So you've been running a handful of projects at the same time. Really,
I like that. That's good terminology.
Concurrent, yeah. So let's flip to best practice number 6, authorizing the best value procurement. So at CSU, the contractor's bid factors are calculated and adjustments are made for small businesses, non-smalls, and DVB, disabled veterans.
And I think for these contracts, it's really good, especially if you're an agency that can have like a UC or a charter city where you could have a 5-year contract. I can't imagine you not investing the time on the front end to do that, because this is going to be a long-term relationship. I've heard the arguments for years for counties and CSUs that it's hard for them to do best value when it's only a year contract. But to me, you're just going to start 3 months earlier, on your preparation to go back out to bid. And I know it seems like a never-ending cycle for them, but you're going to get more bang for your buck at the end of the day by having good thought out best value instead of just a low bid. Because we've all seen, especially I think Southern California is the king of low bid factors. So we've all seen what happens there, and we don't need to see that anymore. We need to see the numbers go back up to realistic numbers. I think that will help everybody involved.
That's correct on the bid factors. Couldn't agree with you more. Sliding over to best practice number 7, joint scope projects and creating detailed scope of works. So this is integral. And we've actually, one of the minuses is we've actually found out that some contractors are writing their own DSOWs for projects. And that is a major no-no. You do not want the contractor to do that. It's best advised that for us, our campus staff write their own DSOW.
Another thing that I like to do is at the end of the job walk, is to sit there with the agency and the contractor and go over the detailed scope of work there. And then nowadays we have electronics. You just open the laptop up on the job site and start rewriting the scope of work to make sure you capture those unforeseen conditions. The ones that weren't originally caught until the contractor puts his eyes on it. He goes, and usually he'll see something, he's not going to mention it. But with a JOC project, you bring that out right on the front end, all those unforeseen ancillary things that would become change orders, because there's no value in a change order in JOC. So get those all knocked out at that meeting, go back, finalize that scope of work, do your final edit on it, and send it out to everybody for signature.
Yeah, I find the joint scope, at least when I was on the project side, joint scope was just the key to success, because when you have all the minds walking the job site together, the solutions can really bubble up and get some really good stuff.
Absolutely. That's that whole partnership thing, right?
Right. And
it takes us back to pre-quals, right?
Yeah, and you probably see that partnership more, that extension of staff more so in the longer term contracts than these annual contracts. But I know in the longer term contracts, the institutional knowledge sometimes lie within the contractors that are working in the buildings.
Sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. They end up knowing the building better than the owner does sometimes. It's a long-term relationship.
Excellent. Let's move on to slide number 8, best practice number 8, utilize accurate and relevant UPD cost data. James, what are you talking about on this one?
This is key. I think your unit price book, that is the Bible of your JOC program, right? It's everything that comes and goes from that space. So the data has to be current, it has to be accurate, and it has to cover the scope of work. Now, there's different ways to do that. You may be an agency that wants hundreds of thousands of line items. You may be an agency that wants 20,000 items or 30,000 line items. You may want one that allows you to be on the fly, create new line items, or one that allows a contractor to add new line items that gets approved. But the key of it is having those prices be accurate and tested, and then updated, especially nowadays with the way the market has gone. With the rapid inflation we've been experiencing, your unit price book can get outdated very quickly. So make sure that you keep an eye on that, and don't allow your books to have old dates on them. And what's funny is you don't think about it, but like mechanical equipment is actually typically cheaper on the East Coast and the West Coast because there's no freight. Most of that stuff's made on the East Coast if it isn't made offshore. Right. And so all of a sudden you put all the freight charges to truck that piece of equipment across the strait, it goes up a lot,
Oh, I
so
bet.
it's pretty fun to get behind that curtain and see how pricing's come up with. I find it really entertaining.
Excellent.
So
So
there is a lot of work by the companies that put these unit price books together. There's different levels of reporting. You have your KPIs. You have what your agency feels is the most important things to track. And quite often we track off of volume. A project manager gets accolades and success and promotions off of how much volume they push through the system. And while it's good, we all need to get projects accomplished. I think a way better way to track this is by how little were the change orders.
yeah,
How close to the original estimate was the final project? Those type of things I think are critical, and that's going to give you a solid program. That's going to help you have higher factors, because then the contractors realize that you run a very tight program and a very tight ship, which requires them to run a tight program. So there'll be less ability to do things that will change the proposal itself. Another thing I like is reporting. I think reports could really help control the way upper management can see the way your JOC program is performing. Having like stoplight reports for executive management, where it's red light, green for either their due dates, if their project's staying on track, have it actually color coded. Having the costing, if an executive management looks at a report and all of a sudden they see 3 reds, they're like, well, how do these projects get busted? They could dive into those instead of having to read through every one of the projects going on in your program. They're really concerned about the red, maybe the yellows, to try to stop it before it becomes a red. Those type of things I think help from the JOC coordinator, JOC administrator up. I think for JOC project managers, I think when they get into their system, they should have a dashboard that has reminders and lets them know what the status is of their projects, and makes at a glance they could see, okay, these are where all my projects are at. We'll give them a fast response and able to stay current with where their projects are going.
great.
And it all has to be tied around your agency's particular KPIs. How do they want their program to run?
Right. Excellent. So moving on to best practice number 10, create a collaborative partnership with team meetings and quarterly program reviews. So if any of my CSU folk are on the line, you guys all know what I do once a month. I do these fun things called, they're called JOC huddle trainings. It's usually the last Friday of the month. It's about half an hour to 45 minutes. I think we're up to number 17, and it's different topics. It's usually pretty relevant topics. The last one that we did, I'm changing the general conditions. So it was actually Jason and I breaking down all 45 changes. We have 45 changes, but we didn't break them all down. We really broke down the 3 main changes, just so campuses could know what was going on. We recorded it for posterity, so if any of our campuses missed it, they could go back and check it out. Save the slide deck as well. But it's integral in keeping this going. We call it the honeybee approach, and that's getting other campuses to talk to other campuses and saying, oh, you know what? I've used that contractor and he's great at mechanical work, or don't ever use that contractor because they're terrible with roofing. Like it's just, we're not trying to throw any contractors under the bus, but I'm just trying to say that it's important to communicate if you want a successful program.
Another thing that I like in an agency's meetings is to have either weekly or maybe bi-weekly or monthly, meetings where a contractor has a designated hour. They're going to be there with the JOC coordinator, where a project manager, an agency project manager, could jump into that room. They know that the JOC coordinator from the agency and that particular contractor is going to be there for that hour, and they can bring up their concerns, questions, or clarifications at that time. And that way you don't have all the project managers, all the contractors together at one time for a forever meeting that doesn't pertain to you 80% of the time. I think that's a really easy way just to waste the day of the JOC coordinator. Everybody else gets to come and go for their respective hour.
Right. And that's something that I did when I was at LA County ISD. We would have the contractors come in and we would go through all of their projects and what was getting caught up and what wasn't getting caught up. Also important to have a fiscal talk, maybe once a month to make sure that fiscally all your JOC projects are still within your budget.
That's good.
Best practice Go ahead.
And before you move on, I just want to do say my kudos to you for your awesome job cuddles and that communication and the program that you have. I think that communication is just paramount, and you do an awesome job with it.
Oh, thank you. Now I'll invite you to the next one. I might even make you talk if you keep bumping me up so much.
No more compliment for Jeremy, right?
Yeah.
Listen, it's not just me. I've got a great team that I work with, and I really it kind of goes to them. And then it just kind of took off by itself too. It's literally it's fun. I think it's all Hawaiian. We have Hawaiian themes, which is fairly obnoxious, but we all wear Hawaiian shirts and listen to Hawaiian music as we talk about JOC.
That's fun. That's fun.
Practice number 11. So allow only limited to no change orders. So at CSU, we do our best to avoid addendums, but let's face the facts. Changes do happen, right? I mean, they happen. So you always want to keep as much documentation as possible, right? What it was before, what it is now, and what you want it to be. So that's photos, sketches, talking to, with our campuses, it's not just the campuses. They have clients as well, right? They'll have the business department, they'll have the theater department or the film department that they're all reporting to as well, making sure that everybody knows, look, you said this is the way that you wanted it. Now this is a change, and really documenting that change. So it's fair to the contractor, because, there's no free construction. That's not going to happen. So James?
The couple keys on this is, first, I think, is the agency project manager's interaction with their client.
Right.
Because so often, soon as the project breaks ground, all of a sudden the client shows back and going, oh my gosh, I would love to have this, or can we change this while we're here? And they're thinking it's a kitchen remodel in their home, that they come up with these new ideas that'll be so fantastic to do. You really have to lock down your client before it becomes a project. Make sure that scope is tightened up really well. And then this goes back to when we were talking about the joint scope meeting, if you will, where the unforeseen conditions should be caught or unrecognized. They're not unforeseen. I mean, there's true unforeseen conditions. I'll give an example in a second, but conditions where the contractor's like, did you guys consider this? I have to do this to make sure this works. You're like, ooh, good point. Let's make sure we include that to the final scope of work. That eliminates change orders. Now, I have an example. There was an airport I was working on where the drawing showed it was 6 inches of concrete with 1 level of rebar, and we were just replacing a few sections. We opened it up, it was 18 inches of rebar, 18 inches of concrete with 2 layers of rebar. Not at all what the drawing showed. That was a true unforeseen condition. No one could have seen through that concrete and seen how deep that went unless they did x-rays beforehand. So that was an owner-inspired change order at the time. And usually that doesn't happen. You don't see that type of thing. But if there are change orders, I agree, they should only be coming from the owner's side.
Correct.
And the contractor, again, should, every time they see something that could be a potential, bring it up at that meeting. That's the most important time during the scoping meeting.
Yep. That way you can add it into, because I've done this. If it's not on the plans, I've added in the DSOW and said, oh, wait, look, we wanted, now I said I want this, and it's as easy as a red line to correct,
Yep,
just
exactly.
And from our perspective, just as long as it doesn't affect the engineering, right, structurally or mechanically, if it's not too big of a change, it's usually just fine. So moving on to, we've done it, everybody. We made it to number 12. JOC program best practice number 12. We did it. So value engineering for me can be defined as an organized effort directing and analyze building features, systems, and equipment and material selections for the success of achieving the lowest life cycle cost, because that's what we're always going for at CSU. We're on the state dime, and we're trying to literally rub 2 nickels together to make a whole dollar in some instances. But as far as JOC goes, James, what do you have to chime in on that?
I think this goes back to your assessment. Value engineering, you could, again, nest projects, and you're going to be, instead of going to a general, you're going to go to a specialty contractor. I think that's the lowest hanging fruit for value engineering.
Yeah,
is have a specialty contract right away. Another thing is to look at remove and replace, look to remove and improve. So many people want to replace part for part, but technology is changing so fast. Do a little homework on the front end and find out what new options are available to you, because especially in mechanical and electrical, there are tons of easy attainable upgrades
Right.
available for you.
Mhm. And remember that your contractor is out there doing this every day on so many different sites, that when
Mhm.
you're walking the job site, if you just ask them, if they're a good partner, they'll volunteer the information.
Right.
But they'll say, hey, we just used this product and it performed a lot better in this instance at this facility. We recommend you might want to try this one and it costs less. So if you have a good partner with you, then they should be offering in that information to help you.
Another one too that I should have mentioned too is roofing systems. Roofing systems have just exploded. New ideas for encapsulation and extending roof life. And especially if you have roofs that have tons of penetrations, there are some phenomenal new technologies available to you.
Or there's also some quick fixes too. I mean, we were doing cool roofing and finding out that the roof deterioration wasn't as bad as we thought it was. Applying a cool roof and getting another 10 to 15 years out of a roof that they thought they were going to have to R&R, but there were no leaks. There were no leaks at all.
I'm under one of those roofs right now.
Are you?
Yes,
Nice.
I did that too. I did that myself to my home.
Excellent. And cost efficient too. So guys, we did it.
So let's just sum it up and wrap it up real quick with the summary. And that is that just keep in mind that job order contracting is a program. It's not contract and forget it. The work begins once your contractors are selected. It does take effort to be collaborative. And don't forget that your contractors do invest in the front end to procure your contracts, to win your contracts, and they do have an investment. So be ready to award them some work so that they can pay for their staff and keep their staff around that they committed to you that would serve you. So there's that little piece of it. It kind of goes both ways with that partnership. And then remember that your program needs to be trained, managed, and monitored. And you can always get the training at CJE. And ongoing education and CJP certification creates success.
Excellent. So I think we're going to jump back at that really quick before we go. We're at the end of the road, right? So which way are you going to go? Are you going to go with success? You're going to go with failure. So you put in a little bit of effort, right? You do a little bit of pull planning, a little bit of planning to get your JOC program right. It'll work. It'll definitely work for you.